Hello there, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Your headlines in the South East this Wednesday evening. Short-staffed and long waits, South East Coast Ambulance Service is told it must improve. A mother tells us how she had to run to hospital when her baby stopped breathing.
When we got into resus, the first thing they said to me was, "Why didn't you call an ambulance?" I told them what had happened and they were disgusted. And one of them actually said to me, "I saved her life."
As the latest section of England's coastal path is opened in North Kent, campaigners are asking, when will it finally be finished?
Also on the programme, could there be a carving crisis this Halloween? Why we might have to put away the pumpkin and turn to turnips instead.
And the magic of microcars. One Kent couple spent 40 years collecting them, saving many from the scrap heap. But how much will they fetch at auction?
Good evening. A damning report into South East Coast Ambulance Service has seen its rating downgraded to requiring improvement. The service covers Kent and Sussex.
An inspection by the Care Quality Commission found that while frontline staff were doing their utmost to provide safe and effective care, staff shortages meant in some cases the level of care had declined.
Well, it has also resulted in long waits for ambulances. Leanne Oakman from Hastings was left with no choice but to run to the emergency department with her baby in her arms after she stopped breathing. With more, here's Kit Bradshaw.
Lily? Keeping a very close eye on her little girl. And after what happened in July, it's perfectly understandable. One Saturday afternoon, after returning home from hospital, where baby Lily had been treated for a chest infection, Leanne Oakman noticed the 4-month-old was rapidly deteriorating.
She woke up from her nap just coughing and coughing, and after a few minutes she just completely stopped breathing. Obviously I called 999 and instantly they said to me, "Do you mind if we put you on hold?" Which I didn't expect. So it was a couple of minutes before I actually got through to an operator, and by that point she had started breathing again, but you could hear she was really struggling. She was grunting.
She was then told an ambulance would take more than 40 minutes. So with the nearest A&E around a mile away, Leanne scooped up her baby and ran.
You're always told that if you need help in an emergency situation, it will be there. And it really shocked me to think that the one time I really needed help, it just wasn't there. And if I hadn't got there much sooner, she might not have made it.
And such experiences with South East Coast Ambulance Service aren't as rare as they once were, according to the health watchdog. Inspectors found there were additional risks for patients from handover delays at emergency departments. NHS response times were not being met, and some were exceptionally long. Most ambulance staff described feeling exhausted and burnt out, while the Trust's leaders did not have the capacity or support to run the service well. The findings come as the GMB union opens a ballot for strike action among ambulance workers across the country in a dispute over pay.
Staff work overtime, they work past their hours, they work past their shifts. And the danger is that people who are that far on the edge, their concentration may not be all it should be sometimes, and they're walking a fine line.
Lily has since made a full recovery, while Leanne has received a full apology from ambulance bosses. They say very high demand at the time of her call was to blame and insist they're committed to improving response times to all categories of emergency call.
And Kit has sent this from CCAM's headquarters in Crawley.
This latest inspection report was critical of senior management, and this evening we've had a statement from the interim chief executive of CCAM, Siobhan Mealy, and she says she is committed to working hard to make improvements both for their patients and also for their staff. Now, the Care Quality Commission says they'll continue to monitor the service of this trust closely, but there is an acceptance by the health watchdog that many of the problems causing gridlock at hospitals are not all the fault of the ambulance service.
Well, lots of response from you to this story today. Let's just run through a few of your comments. Tia Martin says, as an ambulance crew, I dread to think how many of my colleagues have read this thread and considered just throwing in the towel. We are broken. Help us, help you.
Michelle Waters from Maidstone says her mother-in-law found her partner unconscious in the chair. The ambulance took just 6 minutes to arrive. They saved his life and we are forever grateful, she says.
Now, this from Nikki Saunderson from Westmorning, who says it took 10 hours to get to my 78-year-old mum after a stroke at home. Called them at 10 p.m. They finally arrived the next morning after my terrified dad had to sit with her all night. Thank you very much to everybody who got in touch with us today. And there are more of those views on our Facebook page.
A paintball marshal has been sentenced for shooting at and verbally abusing children at a party in Kent. It happened at Mayhem Paintball in Longfield near Gravesend. Zach Ramage, who was 18 at the time, shot paintballs and swore at a group of 9-year-olds. He was given a community order of 18 months for 15 counts of assault by beating and 6 of cruelty to a child.
2 councillors in Eastbourne have resigned in protest at the decision to go ahead with next year's air show. Eastbourne Council says it wants Eastbourne Airborne in 2023 to be as carbon neutral as possible. But the 2 councillors, both Lib Dems, say this is not compatible with the green aims of the town.
The East Hill Funicular Railway lift in Hastings is closing early for repairs. It's the steepest of its kind in the country. Maintenance will be carried out during the winter months. The council says the work will take some time due to the nature and age of the track. Now, it was another big test for Rishi Sunak today as he faced his first Prime Minister's questions. Yes, he was quizzed about the economy, the environment and the NHS, and also about comments he'd previously made in a garden in Kent.
Well, our political correspondent Phil Hornby was watching.
The winner of the latest Tory leadership contest was reminded about what happened halfway through the previous one.
Over the summer, he was secretly recorded at a garden party in Tunbridge Wells, boasting to a group of Tory members that he personally moved money away from deprived areas to wealthy places instead.
We inherited a bunch of formulas from the Labour Party that shoved all the funding into deprived urban areas, then that needed to be undone.
There are deprived areas in our rural communities, in our coastal communities and across the south, and this government will relentlessly support them.
Brighton's Caroline Lucas wanted an assurance that fracking won't happen. It won't, he said.
I stand by the manifesto on that.
And his other promises on the environment actually won him applause from Britain's only Green MP.
We will deliver on all those ambitions. We will deliver on what we said at COP because we care deeply about passing our children an environment in better state than we found it ourselves.
This former health minister talked about the problems her constituents were facing with the NHS under such pressure.
Struggling to see a GP or waiting for treatment. So can I urge him to make unblocking the NHS a priority for him and his health secretary?
Well, I look forward to working with her to deliver what we said in our manifesto, and that is a far stronger NHS.
Mr Sunak put in a very assured performance on his debut here, but as he said himself yesterday in Downing Street, he'll be judged not by his words, but by his actions. Phil Hornby, ITV News, Westminster.
The Marlow Theatre in Canterbury has won the UK Theatre Workforce Award. It's been recognised for its work in giving young people training and experience within the industry, including admin and communications. The award is also for the theatre's efforts to increase health and well-being among staff.
We know we're getting things right, that's the first start of it, and now it's a long-term commitment to develop people in our organisation so that they're the best individuals they can be. That's what we really want.
We have a really great partnership with East Kent College Group, so we do a lot of work with Canterbury College. We work with a lot of schools in the region and the universities to create opportunities for young people to make careers in our industry.
In football, Gillingham's search for a League Two away win continues following their trip to leaders Leyton Orient. 2 second-half goals ensured Orient took all 3 points. Meanwhile, Crawley earned themselves a point in an entertaining draw with Colchester. Goals on either side of half-time saw Crawley come from behind, but the home side drew level with an excellent low strike.
Now you're watching ITV News Meridian in the South East. Coming up on our programme this evening.
Best foot forward, why these walkers along the North Kent coast have a spring in their step today.
And I'll be back later with a very mild forecast and some of your pictures from yesterday morning's solar eclipse.
Plenty more, of course, from us on our website. itv.com/Meridian is the address. You can call us if you have a story idea that you think we should be covering. 0808 1010 095 is the number. And as ever, you can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter and on Instagram.
People who live with gout, a type of arthritis, say they're fed up with being gout-shamed. It's after NHS figures show there's been a 20% increase in the number of people diagnosed in the last 3 years. But experts say we shouldn't assume the rise is linked to lockdown.
Well, the UK Gout Society says numbers have been rising for decades and stereotypes associated with the condition, such as bad diet and drinking habits, can be extremely unhelpful. With more, here's Amrit Birdie.
Gout has long been seen as the disease of kings because of its association with Henry VIII and an overindulgent diet in rich foods, red meat and wine. But as more and more of us are diagnosed with the condition, it's thought genetics may have more to do with it than a kingly diet. Dr. Gerald George is a rheumatology consultant at Kim's Hospital in Maidstone.
Gout is a very common inflammatory arthritis. That's inflammation within the joints, pain, swelling, redness. It's caused by high uric acid in blood that crystallizes in the joint, causing an acute reaction. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night as though a hammer has hit your big toe. That's what people describe when they have an acute attack of gout.
Hilton Hurst first experienced a gout flare-up when he was in his mid-20s.
I've had a couple of episodes of really very severe gout, which is incredibly painful and can get to the stage where you're almost crawling along the floor because you can't stand. I think we need a greater understanding of the link between diet and gout, and therefore what we can do to avoid getting gout in the first place, and also how we can control gout going forward based on diet. I would much prefer not to be taking daily medication.
The UK Gout Society says it shouldn't be assumed that the increase in people being diagnosed is to do with inactivity or excessive drinking during lockdown.
This is a myth that's continued with us from the Middle Ages. And actually what Henry VIII probably had was something called saturnine gout, which is actually due to lead poisoning. We know now, today, that actually there are only certain types of alcohol, particularly real ales and real beers, that are most likely to contribute to the morbidity of gout. If somebody feels that they have the signs and symptoms of gout, which is inflammation of a joint, predominantly a lower limb joint, we would advise that they seek help through their GP.
Earlier this year, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence issued new guidelines to help with more accurate diagnosis and treatment of gout, and it's hoped this will help bust some of the myths around this often debilitating disease. Amrit Birdie, ITV News.
Now, it's been a long time coming, and in truth, it's still not complete. But today, the ambition to finish a footpath around the entire English coast took another big step forward.
The latest section to be completed is along the North Kent coastline from Whitstable to Iwade. But there are still hurdles to overcome along remaining parts of the route.
And as Tom Savidis found out earlier, walkers will have to wait a little longer before the big day arrives.
The Kent coast in all its glory. From salt marshes to mud flats, home to a variety of wildlife, all visible from a path. And that's why these bird watchers are following the trail at Sea Salter. They're keen to make the most of the England coast path in the hope of spotting birds which have migrated to Kent for the winter.
Our role is to educate people about the birds that use this coastline and how we can protect them by not disturbing them. So doing things differently and keeping to a marked path is a really good way of doing that.
This particular bit of the coastal path at Sea Salter has been here for many years, but it's part of a bigger 29-mile stretch between Iwade and Whitstable, along which newer sections have recently been opened. The route between Whitstable and Iwade is the 4th section in Kent to open, bringing the total in the county to 173 miles. New signs have gone up and the path has either been improved or new linking sections have been added. It's part of a nationwide project by Natural England to get us out and about, to explore the coastline and to make the most of what it has to offer.
It allows access to the beaches and the cliffs and the dunes around the coast as well. So people will know if they turn up at the coast anywhere, they'll see the signs for the England Coast Path and they'll be able to easily follow.
Now, nationally, this coastal path was supposed to open in 2020. Why has there been a delay?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One of them, of course, was the pandemic. We also had a piece of legislation that was changed during the process of the coast path, and that delayed us a little bit.
When complete, the England Coast Path will be more than 2,500 miles long and will be the longest managed coastal walking route in the world. But take a little step back, as it won't be fully finished until 2024. Tom Savides, ITV News, Sea Salter.
Yesterday we reported on the huge backlog in our courts, and there are now stark warnings that our right to legal aid is under threat because of a dwindling number of defence solicitors.
Well, poor rates of pay and unsocial working hours are turning graduates away from the profession, creating huge shortages in some parts of the South East. Well, that means access to legal advice in custody and beyond could be at risk. Nick Smith reports.
Legal aid is one of the cornerstones of our justice system, to give everyone representation regardless of circumstances. Free legal advice is an entitlement in custody. If someone is charged and faces the courts, it's then means tested, in line with income and other factors. Jagmohan Singh Tak is a solicitor in Maidstone dealing with legal aid cases, and he's worried about shrinking numbers in his profession, leading to miscarriages of justice.
Fewer solicitors are attracted to doing legal aid work because the legal aid rates are so poorly paid. If the remuneration isn't there, then young solicitors would much prefer to go into other more lucrative areas and work in other areas such as London.
A quarter of duty solicitors are over 50, while just 4% are under 35, suggesting it's a profession that's struggling to recruit young graduates. And since 2015, the number of legal aid providers nationwide has almost halved. The Law Society is warning solicitors' firms are now so sparse in some areas, it's causing real problems with processing suspects.
We have a duty solicitor scheme covering a huge geographic area, and now on that scheme we have just one firm. That one firm has one duty solicitor, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And that's a position that's spreading across the country. It will happen in larger areas. People will be denied the right to legal advice. So we might see more people being charged who are innocent as a result of an inability to access lawyers.
Factoring in both civil and criminal cases, those from an ethnic minority background make up roughly 70% of legal aid applications. And there are worries that these communities will feel the biggest impact when such services are reduced.
Black and minority ethnic people who come from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds do not have access to the law without legal aid, because actually the law is only accessible to those that can afford it. So it's a fundamental principle of our democracy that legal aid is retained and sustained, and in particular for those that lack the means to hire a lawyer, they are able to provide a defence for themselves.
A Ministry of Justice spokesperson said they are injecting £135 million more a year into criminal legal aid, bringing the total to £1.2 billion a year in pay rises, which will help law firms attract younger and more diverse talent. But time will tell if that will be enough to remedy what is looking like a demographic time bomb in a profession which endeavours to give everyone the right to a fair trial. Nick Smith, ITV News.
Now, you'll like this because it's fabulous, it's fascinating, and it's 43 years old. Matt, no, just joking.
No way am I 43 years old. That's a long time ago.
We're talking about a unique collection of unique cars that's going under the hammer tomorrow and is expected to fetch a six-figure sum.
43, I'll take it, actually. Edwin and Jean Hammond collected and cared for more than 40 of the miniature motors, which then moved to a purpose-built museum in Hawkenbury in Kent. And as Tony Green now reports, tomorrow each one becomes a very reluctant sale.
From the weird to the wonderful, this quirky collection of microcars has been built up over 4 decades by a Kent couple. Tomorrow morning, enthusiasts from all over the world will get their chance to give them a new home when they go up for auction. The Hammond collection of microcars was the private passion of Edwin and Jean Hammond. But the story began with a bubble car and their teenage son Andy, who's now a little older.
Well, as a child, I wanted a motorbike. And when I got to 14 years old, I pestered, and my mum and dad both said, no, you're not having a motorbike.
And this was the compromise?
And Dad bought me this. I don't think I was terribly enamoured at first, but it grew on me. What Dad really liked about the microcars is the fact that they were unusual. The more unusual they were, the more Dad liked them.
You never see someone driving around in a bubble car without a big smile on their face. It's not like getting in a car and knowing that you're going to get to the destination. It's always an adventure, because you're never quite sure what's going to happen and whether you're actually going to make it to the destination.
There's more than 40 cars up for auction. Every one of them tells a story, like this 1960 scooter car, which was found behind a hedge, housing some chickens. Now it's been fully restored. The guide price is between £10,000 and £12,000.
I've only been involved in auctioning for 37 years, and in 37 years I can honestly say to you, I have never seen anything at all like this. It is fantastic.
And size doesn't necessarily reflect value either, does it?
Size does not mean value. One of the smaller cars, that's the PLP 50, it's got a 49cc engine. It's estimated between £80,000 and £100,000. The size definitely does not matter in the microcar world.
The bidding begins tomorrow at 10. Tony Green, ITV News, Hawkenbury.
They're just brilliant, aren't they?
They are brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just fun.
But not cheap.
No.
So yeah, but very good. Now, did you know that turnips were the original jack-o'-lanterns, that you carve?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're there, those, yes.
Yeah. Well, fears that a reduced harvest could see a shortage of pumpkins, and we're being urged to go back to our roots, get it, and have a go at carving them instead.
Well, it seems the traditional turnip lantern could make a comeback, as Catherine Walker explains.
The arrival of the pumpkin normally signals the start of Halloween. But a hot and dry summer means this year's crop in East Farley near Maidstone may be a little smaller than usual.
The heat has really brought the pumpkins on very early, and if anyone had planted slightly later, they probably wouldn't have got any at all. So we're probably about half down on our crop at the moment, because we did 2 plantings. First one was very successful, but unfortunately the second one has given us very few pumpkins this year.
But there's no need to let the Halloween fun be squashed this year. Long before pumpkins became the decoration of choice, people across Britain used to carve ghoulish faces into turnips.
So what a lot of people don't realise is that pumpkins are actually an American import.
At this Victorian-themed museum, Dr. Pryor has been exploring the roots of the Halloween turnip.
So initially, for jack-o'-lanterns, people used to carve turnips like this one. And it seems that the origin of having a lantern on Halloween comes from mischief nights. So the lads out playing pranks on people would hollow out turnips and field beets, pop a little light inside and light their way home with them.
So, is it time to embrace our old traditions? Right, Christian, so you're going to teach me how to carve a turnip. Professional artist Christian normally carves pumpkins, but this year he's turned his talents to the turnip. What's your #1 tip?
Well, I had a go on one last night, and I found it quite successful by using a good quality kitchen knife and an ice cream scoop to scoop out the insides.
And what's the main differences then between a turnip and a pumpkin?
Turnips are a lot harder to carve than pumpkins in terms of its consistency, so a bit of elbow grease with the ice cream scoop to actually hollow it out.
Once the lid was off and the inside scooped out, Christian got to work carving. 15 minutes later, we went to see what people thought of our terrifying turnip. We've had a go at carving turnips. What do you make of it?
I
think it's beautiful what you've done. Yeah, I didn't know they did that. I think it's really creative. Yeah, it's different. You could give it a go. It looks a lot spookier than a normal pumpkin, doesn't it? It looks a lot funner. Same difference really, isn't it? I suppose I'd have a go at carving one of them.
It's thought there's over 30 different types of turnip. So, with plenty of options for this year's jack-o'-lantern, there's no need to be scared of a shortage. Catherine Walker, ITV News.
Oh, that was just scary, the whole process.
I have a problem with it. It's too difficult. They're too hard. You can't do it.
Yeah, it brings me on to this. And if you're watching and you're thinking, I'm going to have a go because it's half term, please make sure that if you're a child, there is a grown-up there with you to supervise. And that assumes that you're not a grown-up having a go. And if you are a grown-up, just don't do it. Wear those gloves and just be safe.
Or get a pumpkin. Right, Pip joins us in the studio to talk about the weather. Now, the sky's not always kind to us at this time of year, but yesterday there was a bit of a treat.
There was a bit of a treat. There was a partial solar eclipse and the weather was fairly favourable for it too. Let's take a look at some of the pictures that have been coming in. So this first one is from Nick Emery. Now, the partial eclipse peaked around 11 a.m. Around 10% of the sun was covered by the moon. Another great shot here, this one from Rob Lake, and you may be able to make out a couple of little dark patches on the sun at around 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock. Yes. If you treat it like a clock, and you can see them more clearly on this one from Liam Cooper. These are sunspots and they appear darker than the rest of the sun because they're actually a little bit cooler. I say cooler, it's all relative. They're still racking up around 3,500 degrees Celsius.
Warm enough.
Yeah, warm enough.
You know, that brings me on to my next thing, because it does not feel autumnal and the temperatures are just silly at the moment.
They are. We've touched on the daytime temperatures a number of times over the last few weeks, but it's the nighttime temperatures as well. Average around this time of year, 5-6 Celsius. We're at least double that at the moment. Hurst-Monceau didn't get below 15 degrees last night.
Driving back on the late shift, I noticed that on my car thermometer. Right, let's get the weather details now. Here's Pip.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
So all looking very mild over the next few days, dare I say rather warm at times, but in all other respects it will be fairly autumnal with blustery winds and spells of rain from time to time. Out there at the moment it's looking relatively quiet, a few showers just clipping the East Kent coast, but otherwise a lot of dry weather, and with largely clear skies for a time we could see some patchy mist fog and low cloud developing. But for all of us, it will be an exceptionally mild night once again. Lows generally between 14 and 16 degrees. Tomorrow morning then, dry and bright initially, but it won't be long before we see thickening cloud and outbreaks of rain moving northwards. That clearing away late morning, drier and brighter for a time again before a bit more cloud and some showery outbreaks sneak in from the south later. We keep those fairly brisk southerly winds, but those in turn continuing to bring up warm air from the south, and highs tomorrow will reach a very respectable 18 or 19 degrees. High tides for tomorrow then for Brighton there, 1:45 in the morning and just past 1 in the afternoon. And looking ahead overnight Thursday into Friday, really a repeat performance. So on Friday morning, thickening cloud and outbreaks of rain moving northeastwards, becoming drier and brighter again into the afternoon. And if we look ahead to the next few days, you can see whilst it will stay fairly bright and blustery, those temperatures are looking very healthy indeed, possibly touching 20 Celsius by day.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Well, in just a moment here, the ITV Evening News continues with Mary Nightingale. I'll have your late update just after 10:30.
For now, though, thank you very much for watching. That is it from us. Whatever you're doing, be careful if it's carving pumpkins. Have a great evening. Or turnips. Bye-bye.